Hey guys, so I'm back with another Chinese mobile phone that's powered by a MediaTek chipset. Now I agreed to review this one here because I found out that unlike other phones, it does not have one of those gimmicky fake dual camera setups on the rear. No, just a single camera, which we're off to a good start, aren't we there? So this is called the Maze Alpha X. I never reviewed the Maze Alpha, but this one here has, well, a bezel-less display, but it does have bezels, of course, on the side. But a very slim, small bezel on the top, you can see there with the earpiece. So a little similar to that of the Xiaomi Mi Mix 2 that I looked at. Now down the bottom, you'll also see that we do have a fingerprint reader here. And you can see it's slightly misaligned. For those of you that have a keen eye, you can probably see that and picked up on that already. Next to that, you can see down on the chin there, we have a front-facing camera. Now this one is 8 megapixels. And you'll notice that the screen, the edges of it there, they are rounded, but there's a slight defect. There's a couple of jagged edges there. So the finish of that, for those of you who are quite picky, might bother you because it's not perfect, you can see. So the screen it has on here is 2160 by 1080, 18 by 9 aspect ratio, of course, that new popular trend. Now out of the box, it does have quite a blue tint to it, but of course, it does have mirror vision, and that lets us tweak the color balance on here, which is great. But overall, quite a nice screen. I found that the viewing angles of the screen are in fact better than the Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus that I recently looked at. And it has decent brightness too. It actually comes out brighter than the Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus as well at 580 lux maximum output there. Decent colors for an IPS. The blacks as well aren't bad. So a really good screen in a $200 mobile phone, I feel. So taking a look at the rest of the design here. So it does have a metal frame around the outside that's matte coated. We do have metal volume buttons. Now they don't rattle around. They've got a good feel to them. They hopefully will stand the test of time. Down the bottom, a single loudspeaker Type-C port, which is another positive there. Good to see this on here. And microphone. Now up the top, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack. Those couple of lines there, you can see they are the antenna strips there. So that is actually for Bluetooth, GPS, and wireless performance. And you'll see too that there is no secondary microphone on the top here or on the back when you have a look at the camera module. So the camera lens protrudes by approximately 1mm or so. And we do have a dual tone LED flash there. This back material feels a little bit hollow. It is glass, definitely glass, but I don't believe it's Gorilla Cornering Gorilla Glass there on this that they have used. I don't think so, not for this price point. I haven't scratch tested it or anything yet though. And then we have, of course, dual SIM support on the left side. So that's where the SIM tray is there. And you can also fit a micro SD card. So overall, the build is good for this price. Inside the box, you get a SIM tool. We get a tempered glass screen protector, which is really good. We don't often see this. Instruction manual, Type-C cable, a Euro charger depending on your region. Now this one supports Pump Express 12 volts, 1.5 amps for quick charging. The Alpha X certainly isn't the lightest of mobile phones, coming in at 214 grams. Makes it quite heavy. So the fingerprint reader works about 8 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times. It can be a little bit slow, you can see. That's how fast it is. So it's about 2 to 3 seconds. It all depends really on if you've been multitasking or how long you've left the phone. It can be a little bit slower. So the ROM is a stock Android 7 ROM. You can see these are the apps you get when you first boot it up. We've got FM radio on here too, which is great. Play Store, of course, is included. It has to be. So there is no bloat from Maze, but we do have a lot of Google apps on here. Now the ROM performance I find to be decent, so I'm multitasking here at the moment. I've got a lot of applications open and some games, so it's very heavy. So Chrome scrolling speed, you can see, isn't super smooth and fluid, but it's not doing bad at all when you see just how many apps I am running here. So I'm multitasking and I've got quite a few big games on here. So Shadow Fight 3, Asphalt Extreme, Throttling Test, hits all there in the background. And swapping between those applications is quite quick. It keeps everything in memory too. It doesn't kill it off quick, which is good to see. So overall, I like the performance of this ROM. I feel it's doing just fine the Helio P25, which is very similar to the Snapdragon 625. So the phone has on-screen buttons, but the home button can act like the Meizu phone. So one tap will be back, and then holding it down will actually take you home, which is rather handy and better than nothing at least. So this is the Antutu score here of the Helio P25 paired up with 6GB of RAM. Not a bad score, 63,000. Here is the speeds and results of the internal storage. So we've got eMMC 5.1 spec drive on here. Very good speeds for this type of drive, not bad at all. Now wireless here, I'm not too happy with. So when you're close to your wireless router, you get decent speeds, but it should actually be a little bit faster than this. This is on the 5 GHz band. And stepping away from the router, so just to the other side of the apartment, which isn't really that far at all, the signal quality isn't very good and speeds take a huge hit here, you can see. Now I tested this straight after doing the test in the same room as the router and then walking over to the end of the apartment, so not really too happy with the wireless antenna reception on this model. So the GPS works well. It does not take long at all to get lock. The accuracy is also good, 2 meters here. I found the GPS works a lot better than the Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus that I recently reviewed. Now battery life is good, but it's not quite as good as the Doogee Mix 2 that I reviewed that got 10 hours of screen on time. I got 7 hours and 34 minutes of some heavy use. So I was gaming a lot. You can see there's the screen on time there. So overall, the battery, yes, it is good, but I feel it could actually be better. And I do have my doubts on whether the capacity is actually really 3,900 milliamp hours, or it could be something a little less, like 3,600 or 700 milliamp hours. Now to look at the charge times of the Alpha X. So to fully charge it will take 2 hours and 37 minutes. This is from completely dead, so I had 0% battery, which is not a bad time here, but charging it with just 30 minutes only gets you to 25%, 60 minutes to 56, so it isn't the fastest when it comes to charging times. So it has a single loudspeaker on the bottom, and it is really quite poor. It simply isn't loud enough. I'll give you a sample of it. So it really is quite flat. It needs more volume, that loudspeaker on there. Now the 3.5mm headphone jack quality also disappoints. There's a slight hiss that can be heard when nothing is playing. It kind of irritates me a bit. So playing the latest titles like Shadow Fight 3 here, you get playable frame rates. Other titles that I tested as well, very smooth, playable. You will see some hiccups and stutters, but I'm happy with the gaming performance of this mobile phone. I do think that 6GB of RAM really does help out. So the camera setup is your typical that you often see with MediaTek phones. Now they do have here a 2x zoom mode. Now don't be fooled, of course, there is no other lens on here, and this is only just digital zoom. The shutter rate on it seems to be reasonably good. Now the focus can be at times very slow, and the viewfinder in low light, I've mentioned it a few times, will also be quite laggy too. So not great performance from that. Now video you can shoot up to 1080p only. And I'll give you some samples here. So just start out with photos. You can see that in daylight it can capture an okay photo. But if you zoom in, there's quite a bit of noise. There's some artifacts. And in low light it's very obvious. There's some over sharpening. There's just compression artifacts everywhere. It's not a very good camera at all, and that's no surprise really considering this price range. And you take a look at these samples here too, that sometimes the focus is off completely. Now I focused on these hibiscus, the flowers right there, and for some reason it just came out like this, because I think because of the very slow shutter rate perhaps, or the slow focus, is why this photo came out bad. So very hit and miss with photos, and I'll give you some samples now of the video quality. So the rear camera, the video quality, you get a maximum resolution of 1080p. No 4K. Other phones, the ones that use the Snapdragon chipsets, you can get 4K. If you're after that, then take a look at those phones there. The quality of the 1080p video, well, as you can see for yourself here, it's okay. Now, I have noticed that it will tend to overexpose sometimes. It will sometimes also get the colors completely wrong, so the auto white balance can be quite off. The focus performance as well isn't wonderful. It can be really slow and struggle to get lock. And in low light, the video becomes very choppy, and I have noticed some frame dips as well, even when recording 1080p footage. So they definitely need to focus on improving the camera performance. So let's take a look at the front-facing camera. And now a sample from the front-facing camera. So it can shoot up to 720p maximum. The quality I find in daylight, like right now, is fine. It's good for this kind of price group of phone. However, in low light, the viewfinder and the recording itself will drop a lot of frames, and it doesn't look that great. Then it becomes very choppy, the video. Now, because of the camera's location, that when you do shoot selfies, you have to flip the phone around. It will tell you that. And the other thing too to note, that it does look a little bit pixelated, the background. So it's not exactly the greatest quality of video you can get in this price category. Other phones do this a lot better, and they can even shoot 1080p on the front-facing cameras. The sound as well, not the greatest, and if you are in direct sunlight, which I aren't at the moment because it's overcast, then it will tend to overexpose your face. Again, not the best. So the camera quality on the Alpha X is rather poor. So this is a phone that I really want to like, but it has a few shortcomings like most of these phones do. So they cut corners, the manufacturers. We've got a really nice screen on this. It in fact is better, I feel, than the one used in the Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus. It's slightly brighter, this screen, and the viewing angles are better as well. It has a little bit of a bluish tint, the whites out of the box, but of course with the mirror vision there you can calibrate that and you can get the screen to look quite decent. So happy with that. Now the fingerprint reader performance, it works around 8 to 9 times out of 10. Sometimes it can be a little bit slow depending if you've got a lot of multitasking going on or you happen to have left the phone for a while. It tends to go into like a sleep mode and will take just a few seconds more. But overall the fingerprint reader does perform much better than the Doogee Mix 2 that I looked at with a very similar spec. I like the top bezel. It's a lot shorter. The call quality out of the earpiece I've noticed does have some crackle to it, so it's not the best in terms of call quality. Now we also have the metal buttons on the side, the whole metal housing, the frame around it. That's a really nice touch. It's a little heavy, but it is a solid, good feeling phone in hand, and I do like that. The performance of the ROM also is excellent. We've got an ample 6 GB of RAM, Helio P25 paired up with the Mali T880 GPU, can play all of the latest games with frame rates that are playable, they're smooth, they're not perfect. You will notice sometimes a few little stutters and things, but that's to be expected. So to be expected is the camera performance, which I find to be one of the main weaknesses. It's no surprise really, they do often have bad cameras, these mobile phones in this category. But this one's terrible really because the focus has a lot of trouble. Daytime photos can look okay, and sometimes the whites are off, so the color balance gets it completely wrong, the auto white balance. We'll notice over sharpening, some focus issues. The video quality as well isn't really that great, and that lets it down there. But the biggest complaint for me is the wireless. So the wireless performance, not very good at all. If you're in the same room as your wireless router, then things will be fine. But if you happen to be one of those people that have their wireless router, for example, upstairs and your room is downstairs, then you will notice that it will be very slow. It just suffers in terms of range. I tested it in the studio apartment here, I tested it at home, and with both of my networks, wasn't too happy with the range and the performance of the wireless. The other slight disappointment is the speaker at the bottom. It's just not loud enough, that loudspeaker. They really do need to up the volume on that. So hopefully, if Maze can patch and fix the wireless, if they can boost the performance of the speaker or they can change the hardware in there, then you've got a very good phone, I feel, for the price. It's just those areas where it is letting itself down a little bit and why you can't really recommend it at this stage until that is fixed there. So thank you so much for watching this review. I will have some more up and coming MediaTek budget Chinese phones and perhaps some Snapdragon ones later on in the channel. So make sure you subscribe, and I do hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot for watching.